When you spoke after the match on Sunday, when Liverpool beat Manchester United comfortably, you said then you thought Mourinho's time was up. Why do you think it's gone so wrong this season?
Well, I think you have to go back to the start of the season, really. I just thought it was inevitable that Jose Mourinho wouldn't be the manager the following season. I mean, there was a lot of problems between him and the board. And then, obviously, as big-name players within the squad, there's obviously a massive downturn in a relationship there. That was all for all to see. Taking the captaincy off Pogba, giving it to him in the first place. It just looked like it was coming to an end from the very start of the season. And that was before a ball was even kicked, really. And then you see the results and the performances. I mean, it's nowhere near what Man United should expect, really. And the squad of players, I think, at his disposal isn't the greatest in Manchester United's history. But it certainly shouldn't be so far behind the teams who are challenging for honours this season.
You mentioned the spending over the summer. Mourinho certainly criticised the amount of spending that the club backed him with. Do you think that was the beginning of the end for him? And were the players that he brought in just the wrong choices?
Well, there's no doubt a lot will be made that he wanted a centre-back in the summer. I don't think a whole regime should fall down because you miss out on one player, if I'm being totally honest. I think there's managers in the past who've missed out on players. Really, Pep Guardiola missed out on Sanchez, and Mourinho got him in January. I think going back, Alex Ferguson missed out on Alan Shearer. I think Paul Gascoigne at times. You have to move on and maybe look at a different option. That is part of top-level management and not even top-level management. I think managers up and down the country will say they don't always get everyone they want, really. But there has been a lot of money spent. I think they have the highest wage bill in the country, really. So I think actually talking about funds and what Manchester United spend, I think it's a bit of a red herring. But there's no doubt as a manager, and any manager will be frustrated because you don't always get the targets that you want. And there's no doubt a new manager coming will want a centre-back. I'm not quite sure who the actual centre-back was. Jose Mourinho actually identified and really wanted, and why the board said no, or they felt it wasn't value for money. But I think what we're seeing this season, it's down to a lot more than the missing out on one centre-back.
Yeah, you're suggesting that it's a collective responsibility. I mean, how deep do you think the problems run at Old Trafford?
Well, listen, it's been going on for a while. It's not just down to Jose Mourinho, and it's the third manager since Sir Alex Ferguson moved on, really. And with each passing season, a new manager comes in, it probably puts Alex Ferguson even higher in the achievements he manages, managing that football club, really, because it's probably not an easy club to manage, really. So I never feel any problem or any club is as bad as it seems at certain times. And people are talking about Manchester United need another £300 or £400 million spent on them. It's never as bad as it seems. I've been in situations with Liverpool where people are saying, oh, the whole team's got to go, the manager's got to go. Sometimes 2 or 3 signings can completely revitalise a club and get them moving in the right direction. And whoever that new manager comes in, I think there's a lot of players there he can get a lot more out of as well. This isn't a poor squad of players. Yes, it could be better in certain areas, of course, but I think there's some really good players in that squad. And as I say, I don't think the manager at the time, certainly Jose Mourinho, is probably getting as much as he can out of that squad. A new manager will hope to do that, and with the added bonus of maybe 2 or 3 players coming in, and if they work, I don't think Manchester United will be too far away from the top.
You mentioned talented players. Clearly, Paul Pogba, Alexis Sanchez, just two of those players that perhaps could have done better. Do you think they let him down badly?
Well, you mentioned those players. Those players done nothing, really, in a Manchester United shirt. And you say about letting the manager down, they're probably letting themselves down, really. I don't think they're deliberately not performing well. I don't think that's ever the case with a manager. And people talking about are the players playing for the manager, really, that's been mentioned before. I think players need to have personal pride, and there's a lot of players Jose Mourinho has brought in who haven't delivered, really. But I think those two, rather than maybe looking at the manager, I think they've probably got to look at themselves. They haven't delivered, but can a new manager get more out of them? That is the sad thing, I think, at times in football, when a new manager comes in and a player's performance is completely different. I don't think that bodes well going for the future. And obviously the social media post, I think, from Paul Pogba after the announcement today was very ill-advised, I'd say, whether it was him or his agent, whoever it was. That was certainly not in keeping with the mood today. At Manchester United should have been respectful about what happened. This is a manager who brought him back after he'd left the club initially under Alex Ferguson. So yes, there will be players pleased in the dressing room. That's normal, that's football. Not everyone gets on with the manager. there was obviously discord there. But I think that today wasn't the brightest thing to do.
Yeah, probably not. Look, whenever he arrived, Mourinho and Pep Guardiola here, people probably would have expected a bigger battle between those two. It hasn't quite worked out like that. Do you think that the success of their big rivals, Liverpool included, has contributed to Mourinho's downfall?
It doesn't help, but I don't think that'd be the deciding factor in getting rid of him. I don't think Manchester United are sacking Jose Mourinho because they haven't won the league or the Champions League. They're sacking them because he's so far off challenging for the top teams. I mean, we know how successful United have been over the last sort of 15, 20 years, but I think even in those days, it wasn't an expectation they had to win the league every season. But you think a club the size of United, the money that they spend, that they would challenge for the Premier League and the Champions League year in, year out. And that's the problem. They're nowhere near challenging at this moment. And they haven't really done that since Jose's been there. And that's the reason you bring Jose Mourinho in. You bring him in to win the big trophies because he has been, in the past, a serial winner. And he's been an absolutely unbelievable manager, massive character in the Premier League. But it hasn't worked out at Manchester United. I think he had a good first season in terms of bringing trophies in. Last season, he still finished second to Manchester City. But he was brought in to challenge, I think, City and Guardiola and go head-to-head with them. And at this moment, they're miles apart.
Yeah, and certainly if you look at Manchester City and Liverpool, it does appear that football's moved on from Mourinho's style. Fans very frustrated with his style. Do you think the new man to come in will have to be much more attacking, much more exciting?
Well, that's the traditions of Manchester United, and there's no doubt Jose Mourinho didn't tick every box with Manchester United when he came in as a United manager. But that was because Man United were desperate to get back to winning ways, so some things went out the window. And I will not sit here and criticise Jose Mourinho's football, considering what he's done in football. And people may say it's moved on, and there definitely is something in that, I would agree. But it wasn't too long ago he won the Premier League at Chelsea, so I'd never say any style of football is wrong. But certainly the players at Manchester United must be watching at times City, Tottenham, Liverpool, other sides playing this fast, aggressive, attacking football, and probably looking at it and thinking, I'd like us to play a little bit more like that, really. But that's the name of the game Man United are in now. You can have the traditions of a club, but a new manager coming in now will have his own ideas and his own traditions of way of playing, and that's the reason why he'll get the job. So Jose Mourinho was never going to change for Man United, and he shouldn't have to. Man United brought him to the club because he was a really successful manager, and unfortunately his way of playing football hasn't proven successful.
Okay, well, Laurent Blanc certainly seems to be a name that's cropping up as a potential caretaker role until the end of the season. Do you think, given that he did play for United, understands the club, great career as a player, pretty good career as a manager as well, do you think he'd be a good fit?
I think so. I think he's out of management at the moment. He's managed big clubs, managed a national team in France as well, so probably can deal with big egos also. You think of the problems United really have with Martial and Pogba. I think that must be at the back of their mind, and can they get them on side? Maybe, certainly in Martial's case, to commit to the club even further down the line. The only thing with Laurent Blanc is because he has managed big clubs, will he be sort of totally happy with it being a caretaker manager role? Maybe it gives him the opportunity to, as an audition, if you like, to maybe get the job full time, really. But I mean, going forward, I think if you're Manchester United, I think the board will be looking at Pochettino. Now, I know that name has, come out there, and I think it's an obvious one. But you look at Tottenham now. Tottenham going into a new stadium. Tottenham's actually team on the pitch. The team he's created over so long really is a better team than what Manchester United have now, and they look like they could have a really successful season. And would you want to come away from that and think, well, it may take a year or two at Manchester United? But Manchester United, we should never forget, is a massive law for any manager in any job, really. So, if Manchester United come calling, it will be difficult. But also, you can't forget what's going on at Tottenham with the new stadium and the club that they have. And also the fact that Tottenham won't want to lose one of the top managers out there.
And we're also hearing that a director of football might come into Old Trafford for the first time. Do you think Manchester United were lagging behind their rivals in not having a director of football?
Well, that's the way the game's going. Manchester United proved very successful in maybe an old-fashioned way of doing things under sort of Sir Alex Ferguson, being there so long. It was across everything. And then when the new managers came in, other clubs had moved on with the director of football, maybe more scouting involved. behind the scenes. So there's no doubt Manchester United probably lacked that in certain areas. And maybe that was a reason for Jose also. I can't really see Jose working with a big director of football who's actually telling him what players he's going to get. But that is the way the game's move forward, really. And in some ways you can understand that Manchester United never went down that road because it proved so successful not doing that under Alex Ferguson. So why would you change it? But now it looks like they maybe are a little bit behind the times. But it's not just about getting a director of football. It's the same as a manager. You have to get the right one.
Just a couple of other names I want to run past you. The speculation running rife, of course. Zinedine Zidane would be a superstar appointment. Danny Mills has suggested Gareth Southgate would be a good man for Old Trafford. What about either of those two?
Well, Zidane has the name, the pedigree. Again, you've got the French connection, because I think there's no doubt Manchester United, we think that two big name players at the club, we think they can get a lot more out of. Champions League success also, coming into a squad with big egos, Zidane, and sorting that out at Real Madrid, that was not an easy job. And he also didn't spend a lot of money. He inherited, I think, a squad, from Rafa Benitez, and took that to, 2 or 3 Champions League wins on the bounce. It was an unbelievable job. He's available also. If I was Manchester United, I mentioned Pochettino before, that'd be the first one, but Zidane would have to be on that list, of course, because of the name and what he's achieved success-wise, really. I'm sure he's 100% right man for the job, probably not. In terms of Gareth Southgate, I think he'd come a little bit further down the list because of his other success has come in international football as opposed to club football. He's never really had that chance at a real big club, really. But I think maybe at the end of his time at England, maybe another tournament, a couple of tournaments, if it still goes well, he may be at the forefront of minds of chairman at the top 4 to 6 clubs.
Jamie, we know it's going to be a caretaker manager until the end of the season. So I suppose the question is, will the board back that caretaker manager in the January window?
Well, it's an awkward one, really, because, you're buying players, then a new manager's coming in, he may not want that player. Listen, we know things go on behind the scenes at a club. If they know who they want, and that man is actually orchestrating what's happening in January as well, players he likes, players he's looking at, well, that can certainly happen. But there's no doubt Manchester United need the defensive reinforcements, and it's, again, about getting the right one. But if you've got an idea who you want as manager in the summer, I'm sure they'd have to be involved in who you're looking at in January. I don't think a caretaker manager should be sort of deciding what players the club want for the future if he's not going to be part of the future.